Welcome to the Tuesday Review. I'm Nathan, as always, joined by James. How you going, James?
Not bad.
Joined by Callum. How you going, Callum?
Not bad.
And joined by Rafal, who he doesn't have a microphone, but he's
Silent audience.
Silent audience participant, Rafal. How you going, Rafal? He nods that he's good.
He said he's
That also
good.
might have come through on
Yeah, I
the
think
audio.
he's probably just barely here. See, he does exist.
Yeah.
We do have one listener.
We have a friend.
Live
All
listener. Yeah, we have friends.
We swear.
A friend, yeah, we have
Yeah.
a friend.
Alum can't be here tonight because he's interstate for work.
We sent his AI program
Yeah.
up to Sydney to be defragged and debugged and
Yeah.
all that.
But that's all right. There's still a lot to talk about tonight. We'll get
Mhm.
straight in. Again, keep an eye on the YouTube.
Yes.
Because there's lots of footage from our PAX adventures coming out.
Lots
every
of
week.
interviews with lots of interesting people.
Yeah, so we got like 6 or 7 or something at the moment up.
There's a few up, yeah.
They're good. Came out a lot better this year, I think, with the quality of footage because we're a bit more prepared, and we had alum and we had the tripod.
You were able to split up and do more. And
yeah, and our quality is better. Like we could zoom in a little bit better, and
Yeah.
our technique is a bit improved.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on that. More coming every week from that as
Mhm.
I slowly get around to it. I'm back in normal working life.
Yeah.
So-
Shout out to Nathan for editing all this stuff because, yeah, it's no small task and he's
No.
killing it. So
It takes a lot of time. So now that I'm back at work on my regular schedule, it's going to
Yeah.
slow down a little bit. But I'll still get 2 or 3 out a week, I reckon.
that's
But we
heaps.
took so much footage this year, so I couldn't get it all done.
No.
Pretty sure we've already passed how much we did last
Yeah,
year.
we actually had so much footage last year that I think we just gave up after a while and didn't release a lot of it. And then we moved on to there was something else we had something else we had to do, and so we just kind of left it behind. But this year we were more, because we had experience, we were more mindful of like only take as much footage as we need. But because we also had experience and we had the 2 teams and more equipment, we had more interviews, and so
Yeah.
it's more usable footage, but it's just more stuff we have to put out. But yeah, so make sure you're liked and subscribed and all that to the YouTube. Ring that bell.
That's it. Ring the bell, please.
Mhm.
Moving on. So we got an invite to see A Different Man starring Sebastian. Sebastian.
No, Sebastian Stan.
Yeah.
And Sebastian.
Yeah.
Stan Sebastian. I'm
I guess 2. Yeah, he's got 2 first names.
Yeah, that's always the curse. Anyway, so A Different
Yeah,
Man.
shout out to Natalie from Motto Publicity for giving us this invite on behalf of Kismet, I guess, distribution.
Yeah, we were invited to an early media screening. The movie officially doesn't come out in Australia until October 24th, which is 2 days from recording. And once this comes out as podcast, should be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if you're out there,
Comes out tomorrow. Watch
comes out tomorrow. Comes out on Thursday, the October the 24th. So yeah, check it out. We saw it last week. Yeah, last week.
Yeah, Wednesday.
We were lucky enough to go to the Backlot Studios.
Yeah, it was like a little screening room there.
Beautiful place.
Yeah, it was awesome. And we got our first taste of being sort of media people, getting a little bit of behind the scenes,
Yeah.
privileges. So we really appreciate that.
I was very impressed when we got there and the gentleman who was the projectionist introduced the film, the runtime and the aspect ratio. I was like, wow.
Very professional.
That's it. Anyway, on to the movie. So
This is also a movie I really wanted to see anyway. So when we got this opportunity, I was like, yes, please.
it worked out, yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's about an aspiring actor undergoes a radical medical procedure to drastically transform his appearance. However, his new dream face quickly turns into a nightmare as he becomes obsessed with reclaiming what was lost.
Yeah, so Sebastian Stan plays a struggling actor who has like a quite severe facial deformity, I guess. Like a very disfigured...
Yeah, what's the term for it?
yeah, that's a condition, I'm sure, but I don't know.
It starts with T. Apologies, I should have done my research.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't know, if viewers have watched like the Elephant Man and stuff like that, they would know.
It's kind of like that, yeah.
They will kind of know.
Very severe facial disfigurement. And, in the kind of premise of the movie, he gets sort of, facial reconstruction, so he ends up looking, like Sebastian Stan does in real life, this handsome, tall, dark and handsome. But then obviously the movie's about him missing something about his old self, even though he was, outwardly disfigured or
Yeah.
deformed. You know, it's like Nathan put it best, I think. It's like, is it better to be ugly on the inside or the outside kind of thing?
That's essentially what the movie's about.
Yeah, and I think that's a really...
The condition is called neurofibromatosis.
Okay, yeah.
For
And
interested
what's
listeners.
what's really interesting about it is while Sebastian Stan's character Edward,
Yes.
yeah, is going on this journey of like...
Well, doesn't he change his name to Guy?
He
So
does
Edward
when he
slash Guy,
becomes...
yeah. We won't
yeah.
do spoilers, but Edward / Guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but he's still Edward.
Yeah.
Like, and then he meets Oswald, played by Adam Pearson, who in real life has this condition, so has quite a severe disfigurement. And this guy Oswald is so amazing,
Yeah.
and he doesn't let his looks
No,
bring
he's
him
got,
down.
He's got all the charisma.
Yeah, and so now that Edward looks like the handsome Sebastian Stan, he couldn't get anything he wants, but he realizes that wasn't really about maybe that in the first place, and so he kind of becomes disillusioned, and he has like this identity crisis. What's great about this movie? Everything's great about it. I loved it.
What were we talking about? I put it in my Letterboxd review, but like if you in the start, it's like a classic Woody Allen movie.
Yeah. What do we say? It's like 70s Woody Allen.
In the middle, it's like
80s and 90s Cronenberg.
And then the end is like 2000s Larry David.
Yeah,
Curb.
like Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's one of the best shot movies I've seen in a while. Cinematography is amazing. The score, incredible.
Yeah, we listened to the soundtrack on the way home.
Yeah, we were like driving home. It's like, oh, let's put music on. It's like, check if a different man score is out. I was like, hell yeah. I remember when we talked about Bird Eater and it had that really cool jazzy...
Doom jazz.
Ethereal doom jazz. I'm like, this is like ethereal identity crisis jazz, or I don't know.
It has some of those same
existential
vibes, yeah.
dread jazz. It's really cool and just amazing score. And the performances are fantastic, and the makeup effects are fantastic, and the movie is also very darkly funny.
Oh, the movie's
Very,
hilarious,
very
yeah.
funny. But in a sort of twisted sort of way. Yeah, I mean...
It also balances the line really well of... It doesn't make fun of the condition, but it uses the condition as part of its humor without being mean.
Oh,
I think that's what's so great about it.
There's a scene where Edward is staring at one of those mimes in the city. You know,
Yeah.
the mimes, the gentleman who
the people,
stands still.
the human statues. Yeah.
And it's just like a shot of the statue looking at him.
Reverse shot.
And then a reverse shot of him. And it's just, the contrast is just so funny.
Yeah. And then that comes up later as well.
Yeah. So the way it uses that humor, as you were saying, to deal with these issues and not come off as kind of mean,
Mocking,
rude, mocking.
It's quite a good, like, sort of, representation of, like, just because someone looks different, we shouldn't treat them, they're not any worse, or we shouldn't treat them differently. And even though it's a funny movie and silly things happen, and they're obviously drawing attention to his disfigurement a lot, I think it's just so well handled. And, Adam Pearson being in it and him being a real person with this condition, and also in the movie a character who doesn't really let that affect him.
I think it's interesting because it's like they're perfect opposites of each other, even though they have the same condition. Because Edward lives his life not really wanting to go out. He goes out because he has a dream to be an actor.
Well, he lives his life in shame.
Yeah, exactly. He lives his life in shame because he doesn't like the way he looks. He feels like an outcast, and people kind of try to avoid him. Or he has friends, but like people try to avoid him, and he doesn't like to go out and be social because he's always thinking, "Got to protect my face. I've got to be careful about the way I operate."
People, people treat him differently.
And then once he gets the treatment and he goes out, it's like, yes, he's accepted by society.
But he doesn't accept himself.
Exactly.
But that's right. It's this thing where...
Yes, Rafael, you can laugh. It is cheesy.
No, it's interesting. So the substance and this movie both exist in the same moment, which is a fascinating conversation because it seems like Hollywood, at least Hollywood in quotation marks, because I don't know if I'd use the word... I should not use the word Hollywood. But it seems like we're interested in identity
I feel
and
like-
what it means.
I feel like there's always like cinema and just media in general, TV shows, books. Like there's a lot about identity crisis.
Yeah.
Crises. Yeah, I feel like that's a staple of a lot of character-driven films. But yeah, the fact that The Substance and this movie came
and
out,
I Saw the TV Glow.
yes,
It's all just like, you know, how am I trying to live comfortably in myself? Society, internally, we think society is not going to accept us. So we feel uncomfortable in our own skin. I mean, it's a little different in I Saw the TV Glow. But it's like there's like a refocusing on this movement of identity, of being comfortable in your own skin.
I would say they're pretty much the same, different, the same base.
they're all similar. Yeah, they're all
Yeah, the same base theme.
yeah.
Just different.
Yeah, they're handled
Expressions
differently
of it.
coming from yeah.
So it's interesting that they all have a different version of this message, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like you have the existentialist version in I Saw the TV Glow, where it's not so much about the body horror, it's about being comfortable in your own skin, and also what happens if you don't fix it.
It's dealing with your own inner reality.
Yeah, and then that, you know, that also has that time element to it, where it's like, you know,
And there's a fantastical kind of Twin Peaksy nature to the way it's told, and
and then you get The Substance, which is just flat out body horror, where it's more like, you know,
and that one was very like on the nose.
Yeah, that's very
cheesy.
That's very hitting you over the head with it, where it's like, and it's not trying to be. That's not a dig, because The Substance is the point of it is it's not subtle. It's like Hollywood will throw you away the minute you turn. You know, if you're a Leonardo DiCaprio girlfriend, the minute you turn 25. And then you've got this film where it's not so much about how Hollywood or like, you know, society will treat you. It's more about how you yourself feel and reflect that out.
Yeah, and it's told in this dark kind of Woody Allen / Cronenberg
the fact that he meets someone with the same condition as him who thrives is an interesting take on it, because they easily could have made this film where he hates himself, he hates his life, and then he kind of just coasts through after he's good looking, but he hates himself. But it's like the fact that they introduced a disfigured character and then that guy's like living the dream.
Yeah.
I think it's such an interesting way to take the story.
He doesn't let that affect him.
Yeah,
and he does the things he wants to do, and he...
Even with his deformities, he can sing better than me, and he can play the saxophone.
Yeah. That's such a funny scene.
That song is on the soundtrack. Go listen to it.
Oh, yeah, that song too.
There's also a scene that would make David Lynch so happy when he goes up to dance and he's got this little swagger.
Yeah.
And it's like something out of Twin Peaks. It's awesome.
Yeah. Such a good movie. Like, I was really looking forward to this movie, and I was going to go see it anyway. But, you know, it probably wasn't like my most anticipated movie or anything. But I think after it finished, I turned to you guys and I said, I think that's the best movie I've seen this year.
Top 3.
Yeah.
When we left, I said top 5, but it's like top 3.
I mean, I really liked I Saw the TV Glow, so that's up there too. And there's some other good movies we saw, but I think A Different Man might be my favorite so far. And we're almost at the end of the year.
The entire time we were watching the film, I kept expecting there to be a scene where he finds a growth. And he's like, oh no.
Yeah.
But that never happened. Which I think is to the strength of the movie, because it doesn't focus on Edward's personal anxieties. It focuses more on how he should be thinking about himself.
It also, it introduces things that, you know, even in the Substance might have come up similarly, but it took in a completely different direction. And, you know, I wasn't the biggest fan of The Substance. And they're two different films, so it's not really fair to compare them. But I just felt it could have gone a more simplistic way, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And so I never knew what was going to come next.
I really shout out to the Letterboxd review that was just the Seb stance.
Oh,
yeah, that was Demi. He's great, that guy. Yeah, that guy's awesome.
One of the coolest parts of the film is towards the start.
Wait, his name's Demi. Demi Moore is... anyway, I'm getting... getting off topic.
There's a scene towards the start of the film where they use a machine to sculpt his face, like to get like the
that
such
was
a cool
Cronenberg-y. I was like
thing.
hooked to my veins.
Yeah.
But that's what's so great about the movie. It juggles all these tones and kind of themes and visuals and sound. Sound design's really good too. And like it all just works.
I like that. I'm trying to keep this spoiler free, but I like there's a part of the movie where he realizes that to be in his dream role, he has to wear a mask of himself.
Yeah.
So there's this layering where it's like he's
gone back to his old
now that
self,
he can be fully seen as he is.
Mm.
He's not comfortable. He has to have the mask on to be, to deliver his authentic performance.
Yeah.
Because it adds a layer of abstraction. They're not really looking at him; they're looking at the mask, which maybe frees him up.
He's trying to reclaim
because like
something.
even with like all the growths or whatever, it's like his face, if you want to call it that, is underneath it.
Yeah.
So it's like I guess he feels naked without it. If you want to look at it in that way.
Yeah, and I thought that was going to go in a completely different direction, and I'm glad it went the way it did. But yeah, it's a really good movie. I just visually I was so.
It looks stunning.
Yeah.
It sounds stunning.
Yeah.
Everything about it's just great.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. Definitely check it out if you can.
A proper drama. You know what I mean? Like it's not an action movie. It's not a big blockbuster. It's so nice.
It's character drama, but like with a healthy dose of kind of a dark sense of humor.
A dramedy, yeah.
Well,
dramedy,
it's A24.
Yeah, but that can mean so many things now.
Yeah, but it means it's a good mid-budget.
Speaking of A24, at the first part of Beau is Afraid, where he's in the apartment building and it's just so anxiety-inducing and it's crazy, and that felt like that some of A Different Man had that kind of energy of like where he's in this old apartment building and there's things falling apart, and you don't know where he stands. He's not sure where he stands with certain people, and so you get this kind of sense of anxiety. So I really, because that was my favorite part of Beau is Afraid, and then that movie went in a different direction, and then this movie, it does its own thing. It's very different, but I appreciated that energy from it too. Yeah, so I really liked it.
Yeah, go watch it. I want to buy one of those masks.
I don't.
Yeah, I'm good.
Could just walk around in the house just wearing one of those masks.
What about a little action play set with Edward and Oswald and
maybe just a little stage replica.
Yeah,
with a couch in the middle.
That'd be cool.
Ingrid and the little stage.
I won't spoil anything.
Yeah.
All right, look, we'll move on. James also recently watched Beetlejuice 2 for the first time.
Yes.
After having rewatched Beetlejuice 1 in preparation.
Yes, very important to do so. So you guys watched Beetlejuice, the sequel, to back when it came out earlier this year, because I'm very wary of these rebootquels and legacy sequels. And I'm trying to save money. So I was like, look, I'm going to watch it eventually, but I won't go with you guys to the cinema. So you guys went with Alum, and you all... 3 of you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And you talked about it on the show in a previous episode. And now it's out on video on demand. So we're like, you guys wanted to rewatch it. And I was like, all right. So we watched
it together.
So before that, obviously I rewatched the first movie because it's classic and I love it. And I hadn't seen it in a while. And it stands up so well. It's so funny. And it's very tight.
Did you watch the 4K?
Whatever's on streaming, so it's probably 4K, yeah. I wanted to buy the limited edition, but I'm trying to save money. It's really, But eventually, hopefully, I'll get the physical of the first movie. Such a good movie, and I appreciate, peak early Tim Burton, but also, I appreciate a lot of those old movies is, the writing is just on point. It's just, here's the beats we have to hit. Here's the characters.
They knew how to write a good film.
Yeah, and it's like 90 minutes, and some things kind of come out of nowhere, but it's it's always moving, it's always developing. You know where you stand, you know what each character's motivations are. It's very simple, and I feel like a lot of more modern movies are just very bloated, and even if they're short, they're just missing a lot, and if they're long, they're just dragged out, and the writing just is not as good as it used to be. Also, movies like the original Beetlejuice don't usually come to the cinema big releases anymore. Tim Burton movies used to be huge, and it was kind of crazy that a movie like Beetlejuice or Edward Scissorhands came to the movies, because it's those are weird movies. It's how do you sell those? How do you market those? But they were huge, and they're great movies, and they're popular. Now, obviously, we see big studios don't take those kind of risks. You got smaller studios like A24 making kind of weirder movies. but no one's out there releasing kind of big weird movies anymore. And Beetlejuice, the sequel, is kind of relying on the brand recognition and the legacy of the original, so that the studio behind it, I can't remember who it is, like
Warner Brothers.
Yeah, are going to be like, all right, we'll let you do this because it's a established brand.
Well,
excuse me, I need some water.
Yes, the movie actually has a more interesting history of like behind the scenes production with this particular movie, right? So initially, it had double the budget. It had like a $200 million budget, but it was going to be an HBO or Max streaming film.
Yeah.
And Tim Burton said, no, I want it at the cinemas. And the studio said, well, obviously that's going to make a massive loss for us because we can't advertise it and we can't use their whatever internal kind of tactics they do to say, oh, look, you know, this movie generated...
They'd have to pay for more marketing as well, whereas for a digital one, the marketing can be streamlined more.
Yeah. So basically they turned around to him and they said, well, we'll give you half the budget if you want to go to theaters. And he said, love it.
Well, that's kind of my point is like, you know, they had to do a lot of sort of compromising, and also the only reason it was made is because there's a legacy behind it and because there's a brand recognition behind it. Whereas if this was an original movie, they don't really release big movies like that anymore.
You recently mentioned, and this isn't a fantasy film. You recently mentioned Beau is Afraid. I would say that's a pretty big, weird film.
But that wasn't a wide release. And
wide enough.
A24, like it gets played
We went to see it at a local theatre.
At Pentridge, it wasn't at Hoyt's or Village near us. And
it's
also
accessible enough.
But no, I'm talking about
any
like
movie is accessible enough if you want to travel.
Yeah, like I mean, this is we've talked about it for years on this show and back on the old show. Like, yes, these movies are released and they're still made, but not to the level they were in the 70s, 80s, 90s, where you could go to your local big
cinema
megaplex and they would be playing a weird movie.
And I wonder why that
Barton
stopped.
Fink would be at our local Hoyts. Now, can you imagine that? No, it'd be an A24 movie. It'd be half the budget, and we'd have to go to Cinema Nova or Pentridge or Palace Cinemas, a sort of
more boutique cinema.
Yeah, you know, and it's still easy enough for us to see it, but it's not a big.
Yeah, we've talked about it to death, but outside, if you go on a major cinema like Hoyts or Village, if it's not Disney or a regional festival movie like we've talked about on the show before, we cater a lot to like the Indian film festivals and stuff like that. If it's not something major that's going to guarantee the cinemas money, like Disney, they're not interested.
It's all kids' movies, superhero movies. And occasionally you get some different stuff, and that's great.
Yeah.
But
the manager has to bleed for it, but he gets it sometimes.
But yeah, so my point is, I was wary of this sort of sequel. Tim Burton hasn't made really anything good in a very long time. I kind of liked Big Eyes, but other than that, Corpse Bride's okay. Frankenweenie's, but everything else is pretty much awful for the last 15 plus years, almost 20 maybe. And so I was a bit wary of that. And so, yeah, I didn't go initially, but I saw it now. And I didn't like it nearly as much as you guys, but I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it. It has a lot of problems that a lot of legacy sequels do with like retreading and member berries and callbacks and fan service. But there's a couple of cool bits in there that's a bit different from the original movie, and those are probably the most interesting parts and most fun parts. Not all the jokes landed, whereas I think the first movie is consistently funny. This one has some stinkers, but then some really funny bits as well. Visually, I didn't really like the way it was shot. It looks kind of, I don't know if it was digital, but it looks kind of flat and ugly. But I do appreciate, and you guys talked about this, they do use a lot of practical effects, practical sets, nice costumes, stuff that you don't see a lot anymore, and stuff that even Tim Burton's last few movies, like Dumbo and those awful Alice in Wonderland movies, like were just CGI garbage, like just some of the most ugliest movies ever made. And now you can see him sort of, I won't say he's back, but he's on the right track.
I think, and obviously this is probably just promotion, but he said like making this movie was the most fun he's had making a movie in a long time. And I think you can see that in like all the practical stuff. You can imagine the working environment.
Like we were discussing the movie after you'd seen it, and I said, yes, the narrative has problems.
Yeah.
It's not as good as the first, that's true. But I feel like the love is there, and you can feel it in a way that you can't feel in a lot of other movies, where you can see that they took the time to design the sets properly. They built them well. They look tangible.
It's not like Indiana Jones in a sand pit with plastic trees.
No, like you can see that, like
Kingdom of Crystal Skull.
The people, like you can tell that the people were trying to tell the
CGI monkeys,
the best story they could. And they were trying to make it as authentic as they could, and everyone was happy to be there. And I feel like, I will say, one of the things that I like less about the film is how much Tim Burton uses it as an advertisement for his wife, Monica Bellucci.
Her subplot has nothing to do with the movie. It's actually...
Yes, she's beautiful. I get it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You only need to have that in once, and then we can move on.
Yeah, like I think a big problem with this movie is it feels like a bunch of ideas that they kind of mushed together, and we're just like, look, it's been almost 40 years since the first movie, and over the time we've had all these ideas and rewrites, and it's just like, all right, let's just have everything in there, and a lot of it can be cut out, streamlined. It needed a big old rewrite. I think a lot of it is a bit too similar to the original movie, and there are a lot of subplots that just don't need to be there.
It should have been a lot simpler of a film. Spoilers for Beetlejuice. I sincerely think that the entire movie should have gotten started a lot quicker, and it should have been about saving Astrid from the underworld. That should have been the entire film. Like, not like maybe the wife... Maybe Beetlejuice's first love can be in it briefly as a subplot.
Lydia.
No, not Lydia.
Dolores, Monica Bellucci's character.
Yeah.
See, this is another thing. Like, so in the original movie, when he's trying to get married to Lydia, and he takes out the ring from his pocket, and it's still on a finger, and he's like, "She meant nothing to me," and he takes the ring off the finger and throws it away. That's a funny joke, great little gag. Now they've done a full like Cobra Kai and be like, that little reference is this whole backstory of Dolores and his time. Now that leads to one of the best parts of the movie, where it's like a flashback to when Beetlejuice is alive and during the Black Plague, and it's like all black and white. It's like an old Mario Bava movie, and it's like all in Italian with subtitles. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is different from the first movie, but it has that same energy, it has that same goofy cartoonishness that Beetlejuice is known for. But it goes nowhere and doesn't need to be in the movie. And they should have chosen one or the other. Is it about his old... And again, that character doesn't really need to be in there, because that's a one throwaway line, one gag from the original. Same
with Willem Dafoe's character. Yeah, he doesn't need to be in there either.
Yeah, and he's having fun, and it's like okay, this is cool, but it's like, why is all this?
Well, the makeup's real good on that. On his head. That's awesome. I will say the Soul Train stuff is pretty cool. I like that a lot. Yeah,
that's fun. It's just a bit, it's a bit messy. It's a bit too much going on.
The other main problem I have with the film is I think they should have made Astrid way more of a goth. Because she's just a daughter who slightly doesn't like her mum. Yeah. Whereas in the original, it should have been a generational thing where Lydia now has to be like, oh, I was so annoying. You know what I mean?
Well, like, but then then her character would change, because she would have grown out of it. Whereas she's still kind of goth, and that's kind of cool. But
but I think Astrid should have been a lot meaner. I think that would have made the movie a lot more fun.
I think one of the problems I have with the movie is Jenna Ortega, who plays Lydia's daughter. She's so hot right now. She's so huge. She's one of the reasons, probably the movie even got made, and probably one of the reasons the movie's doing so well, because even young people who don't really have any connection to the original film are going to be like, I'm going to go see the new Jenna Ortega magical comedy.
They're not like us in the studio. Like, I have to go see the new Justin Theroux film.
Real connoisseur of Justin Theroux. But what was I saying? Jenna Ortega. Yeah, she's in this movie. Her character has nothing to do. She's a very plain 2D,
one-dimensional,
one-dimensional. And it's not even that she's not goth enough, quote unquote. It's that like she's kind of her own person, which is cool. She's not just the little younger version, 2024 younger version of Lydia from the original movie.
Like goths don't exist in the same way they used to.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I understand they didn't go down that road. And she has her activism and stuff that's kind of, you know, but that's mentioned once and then never brought up again. And she doesn't do anything. And also her subplot, again, another subplot in the movie. She falls in love with this boy, and that was boring. And to sort of connect, what was it called? Frozen Empire, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Yeah,
that had a similar subplot, which I hated, and that also misused and underused, and you know, did a bad job of writing McKenna Grace's character in Frozen Empire.
Einstein, is that what they call her?
No, Phoebe.
Phoebe, yes.
Yeah, she's Phoebe Spangler's. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, and that was an awful subplot, and this movie has that similar vibe of like, why this is boring, and then there's this twist, and it's like, oh, okay, and then just like it just resolves and we move on, and there's like a whole bunch of other subplots, and then they resolve, and then of course there's all the callbacks to the original. It's like, oh, we didn't do the singing scene yet, there has to be a song scene, and we didn't do this scene, so we have to do. That's all meh. The fun bits are when it's like being super weird and a bit different, like the Italian scene. There's a crazy bit with a evil Beetlejuice baby. Awesome, like all practical effects, crazy cartoonishness, great. Michael Keaton is still great as Beetlejuice, but you know, he's early 70s. Like the energy is different, and it's not bad, but it's like doesn't have the same punch to it. And again, you know, you do these legacy sequels, and you wait so long, and like I said, the only reason they're sort of made is because of the brand recognition. And then this movie's doing really well, and Michael Keaton's like, I'll come back, sure. And so, you know, they might do a third one, and you get this Ghostbusters kind of thing of like, there's this long gap, and then there's a new movie, and then, well, that does well, so now we just have to keep making them. And you get this weird lopsided classic original, and then a gap of decades, and then a couple of reboot
the Star
sort
Wars
of
problem.
Yeah, and it's kind of balanced in a way where it's like, well, the original was great, and that's the only reason these reboots are being made, and now you're just milking it until the people are way too old to keep making them.
I wouldn't say this is a case of milking it, just because
No,
everyone seemed to want to come back. Everyone had a good time.
Yeah, and that's why it's not a bad movie. You can feel like
there's love there.
Yeah, and like I could.
It's not like Star Wars where they hate it.
Exactly, and
they just want to make money. They hate the franchise.
Even though I had a lot of problems with Beetlejuice, I couldn't bring myself to hate it. I wasn't like, this is awful,
because it was still kind of fun.
Yeah, it still has great moments. It has enjoyable. It's watchable. I didn't love it. It's not great, but yeah, I didn't hate it. Like, I would probably watch it again in the future. My rating of it, my thoughts about it might change, but like, it's not something I'm like, that was garbage, avoid it completely. I am just a little sad, like a lot of these legacy sequels is like, would have been great to have a Beetlejuice sequel in the 90s. Like, that would have been perfect.
Was the TV show not good enough for you, huh? The
cartoon, yeah. Well, I'm sure they'll reboot that, you know, the CG cartoon version.
They'll put it on HBO and ruin it.
Yeah, they'll do one season and then cancel it.
Like they'll do a
Velma.
No, they'll make it and then they'll shelve it and write it off for tax purposes.
Even better.
But you know, there was in the 90s, like, they were going to do like Beetlejuice in Love, and it was going to be like a romance comedy where he tries to marry another woman. And then there was going to be Beetlejuice in Hawaii, which was like a parody of like those old 60s beach blanket bingo, you know, beach party movies. I think that would have been amazing because that's different, it's weird, and Tim Burton's colourful, cartoonish style matched with his dark gothic would have been perfect for that kind of thing. And in the 90s, you know, there would have been a lot of practical effects still. And
Marvel,
you know, a lot
Marvel
of the cast,
and Disney hadn't taken over.
Exactly. And a lot of the cast still would have been in their prime. And so, you know, that would have been so fun and different. And the movie we get here is a lot safer and smaller and just kind of like, we're going to retread some of the original, do a little bit different. But, you know, I would have loved them to just go crazy and out there and do something big. So it's a shame, you know, with a lot of these legacy sequels, it's like, you know, people have been asking for sequels for years. And then when we finally get one, even if it's good, it's like, it's a shame, you know, now everyone's a lot older. And just think the movie industry is different. The way they make movies is different. It's just it's a shame.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. Look, we might go to a very quick ad break before we move on. We'll be back with more right after this. Moving on, we also watched Smile 2.
Yes.
Which should have been called Smiles, although maybe they'll use that for the next one.
So when we saw, actually 2 years ago, Smile came out, and I was like, I don't really want to spend the money. This looks like one of those kind of generic horror slasher movies that come out every year.
Cheap, Blumhousey, kind of Conjuring, Insidious.
Yeah, and I was like, and you guys went, and you were like, it's actually really good. And and people online were saying it's actually really good. And I was like, I think we talked about it back in our review. I was like, I looked at my watch. I'm like, I could probably make a screening of it right now. So I went over and I watched it on my own. And I was like, oh, that was pretty awesome. Was not expecting to enjoy it that much.
Yeah.
So this first Smile was a pleasant surprise. It was, I think, originally supposed to be a straight-to-streaming...
Yeah.
Paramount. Was it Paramount?
Yeah, Paramount Plus.
Straight to streaming. And then I guess they had enough faith in it to release it, which they definitely made the best choice there because it is very well made. It's very well shot. Parker Finn, the writer-director, did a great job with taking something something we've probably seen before. It's got a lot of similarities like The Ring and other things.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of jump scares and horror tropes, but just doing it really effectively and stylishly, and it just being a sort of fun, compelling horror movie. And so Smile 2, which I think we lots of people probably joked about, but I'm pretty sure we joked about on the show, like, it should be called Smiles, but yeah, they just called it Smile 2. So that was coming out, and I was like, we should definitely see it because the first movie was so surprising that hopefully they can keep that up. And I won't speak for you guys, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as much as the first movie. I think it does suffer from a lot of sequel problems where it's very similar to the first. It hits a lot of the same beats.
I think it was a little bit, in places, too long.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Maybe, yeah. It's a little over 2 hours, so...
I think they could have shaved a little bit off it because, as you said, some of it gets a little bit...
Samey,
a little bit repetitive in some portions of it.
Does anyone want a Voss water by any chance?
Well, yeah, that's why I've always got my water here with me. I was coughing before I was going to turn into Beetlejuice.
It's not uncommon for movies to have brand placement, but this one was egregious. I
don't know. Stay hydrated. I always tell you guys you need to drink more water.
Look, I gave it 3.5 stars, I believe. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I do feel like what I liked the most about the first film was it had that 90s kind of thing where they did some legwork to try and figure out the origin, the mythos behind the problem, the background of it. And
the main character in the first movie has still a problem solving, like figure out where it comes from.
I especially like the race against the clock stuff. I love that so much. Yeah. And that's what the first movie did so well, and it's not something we see all the time anymore.
I will say... The sequel kind of led me on a little bit because one of the taglines was like "break the curse," and I'm like,
"Don't spoil anything."
I'm not spoiling anything, but that implies legwork and kind of we'll learn a little bit more, and we don't really get that.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at. Is that wasn't really present in this film.
It doesn't evolve the lore a lot.
I was hoping that it would be more of a direct continuation from.
Well, the opening scene, which we won't spoil, but was fantastic, and it's
like a giant one shot almost.
It's a direct continuation of the end of the first movie, and I was like, "Oh, this is awesome!" And then it ends, and then the sort of rest of the movie happens till about the middle, and it hits a lot of the same beats as the first movie, but now we're following a different person with the curse of this monster, the Smile curse or whatever, who's now a pop star, Sky Riley. And I think that's some interesting stuff because she's in the public eye and she has substance abuse issues, and there's this...
Again, about fame, much like the substance and
she has a past trauma, and there was a Letterboxd review of Smile 2 that I saw that I liked, where the person said, I like that the Smile movies are about characters with trauma, but are also like fun horror movies. And I think that's why I enjoyed both movies, even though they both have problems. Like, there's still like good characters with past trauma who have to fight against this monster that, you know, is tied into their past trauma, whatever. But it's also just fun gore and, you know, cool cinematography and music and sound effects and, you know, just monsters and weirdness.
Yeah.
And so you don't get dragged down into it's a metaphor for whatever, and it's just more, still just fun.
The moments of the film that dealt with the Smile curse directly were the best parts. Like the jump scares, I feel, were more effective in the first, but the more supernatural scares, I think, were the strongest part of this film.
So in the first movie, there's a lot of jump scares, and I don't particularly like jump scares. I'm not a tough guy, but a lot of the time I'm like, they don't affect me. But there's a couple in the first movie that are fantastic. The one at the car window and the one with the glass coffee table. So good. And even I rewatched the first movie again. Even though I knew they were coming, I was like, oh, so good. The second movie, again, has a lot of jump scares. Doesn't maybe hit the heights of those two, but it does have some really great ones where they just they make everything a little bit bigger. So, you know, a lot of sequels is, you know, bigger doesn't always mean better, but there are more...
Ensemble scare is a good one.
There are more smiles.
Without going into it, the ensemble scare.
There's stuff like that, and there's I'll just call it the stalker scare, which is really great, and also has this perfect blue kind of the pop star being stalked, and she doesn't know what's real and what's.
Yeah, perfect blue is a good analogy.
And that I really liked about it.
I think in my review, I said, like, it deals with themes of isolation as it pertains to fame and superstardom and the social fragility that comes with not knowing if people are with you just for you or for your money and fame. So, like, that kind of concept, that perfect blue kind of psychological horror concept, is a really good fit for the Smile franchise and the Smile Demon. Because it plays on people's...
Yeah, and Naomi Scott is very good as... the main character, Sky.
The other issue, and this is more of a world-building problem, is that by the events of Smile 2, the Smile curse is already known in the world by the start of the first movie. It's not
not really
widely known. No,
I wouldn't say
it's known.
It's known for the people
it's known
that
to some of the victims.
Die.
You can find out about it in the first one, in the sense that there are tales about it.
There was that one guy who traced it back to Brazil or something.
But that's
and
just
but by the time the second movie comes around, they should know a little more about it. Like, there's the one guy who knows something, but they don't really.
Yeah, but
I think the general public wouldn't really know a lot.
The point I was going to mention is that I think they should have played into that a little more, where she could have been like, okay, well, what can I do? Who can I talk to?
That's why the opening of the movie is so promising, because you're like, well, here's a person who knows from the first movie how this thing works. And then the movie kind of goes in a different direction.
Again, without spoiling anything, I kind of disagree, Callum, because the whole point of the movie is people lose their mind with the curse, and then it gets transmitted, and now they're the original... It's like a parasite, right? That person's dead and a new person's
in an ideal sequel, and I agree with Callum on this, it's like it would be good to explore a bit more of the lore.
No, it would, but the movie's internal logic isn't like, of course they're going to know about it.
Now, I think we talked about this in the first movies. You don't want to explore it too much, because then that takes away the scariness, the mystery of it.
I think the problem is that the main character is fighting a curse, and she doesn't seem, at least, from... I'm not going to spoil anything, but she doesn't seem to have a viable way out. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in the first film, at least they're attempting to find an exit from the curse.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's where this movie the second movie has some really good parts, is where, even though it's a bit samey to the first movie, there is a point where it's like, okay, she has a method where she could potentially beat this thing. And I think that's where it gets interesting. Even though the climax is basically the same as the original, just a bit bigger, on a bigger scale, there is a bit different there, where I was like, this introduces maybe a bit of lore where you maybe are able to beat it. Unfortunately, like the first movie, and like, you know, a lot of horror movies, because the entity is messing with you and you don't know the difference between reality and what's in your head.
And how it's passed on means essentially the new victim starts with a blank slate.
Yeah, but I can understand like some of the lower sort of star reviews I've seen and some of the criticisms, and I kind of agree, even though I really enjoyed the film overall because I still had a lot of fun and visually and it's just well directed and well made. I do agree that because the characters don't know what's real and crazy stuff happens and then haha, it's all in your head and haha, there is a lack of stakes. And when they do introduce something, you're like, okay, maybe she can beat it. And then it's like, no, that didn't actually happen.
I mean, it's a problem where I want the characters to have a sense of agency.
Yeah.
And it's like, you look at Smile 1, it's like, okay, you think you've got agency, but do you? And it's like, well, what's the point? You're just watching a snuff film.
Yeah, but,
you know what I mean?
that's part of the horror genre where it's like this hopelessness. It's like the good guys don't win. You know, there is no way out. And that's fine to an extent. But, you know, especially when you're doing a sequel and potentially a third movie after this, hopefully, you don't want it to get... Because a lot of horror movies is just the same movie over and over again. A lot of sequels of any genre, same thing over and over.
A sincere question to you guys and Rafal, who's in the audience.
Rafal's like, who? Me?
Yeah. You know, without spoiling it, knowing how both movies end at this point.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if I was to watch a third one, I'm just going to anticipate the ending because I pretty much already know where they're going to go.
Without spoiling anything.
Well, without spoiling it, I disagree. I think all right,
but anything that could happen in any of these movies could be real, but it might also be delusional.
Yeah.
They need to have a mechanism that reliably, and I know they don't need to. A lot of people like these movies because there's this interplay between delusion and reality. But it's like, I think that I should be able to watch the movie play out and be like, okay, he or she's got a chance. You know, they're doing something in the real world. At any moment, the curse could take over and they could get a step deeper into it. But it's like a Jacob's Ladder situation where it's like a struggle to find reality.
Yeah, but this is why the third movie has to be a bit different. And I think the end of this movie...
Without spoiling anything, it sets up stakes where it will be really interesting.
A lot of bigger stakes. So I think potentially the third movie could be a lot different.
Well, if you were basing it on the ending of the second movie, then it has to be.
And also, hopefully, it's not just a retread again and there is some exploration of lore and there is, like Callum wants, like a more sort of proactive attempt to learn and defeat the entity.
Well, you look at the first one, right? Like it wasn't hell to leather straight away. She had time to try and investigate this thing, at least initially. Whereas, like, I feel like the lines blur a lot quicker in this film.
But the new character also doesn't have a detective mate that can do all the legwork for it.
The point is, it feels like it escalates quickly in this film, where the lines are blurred between reality and delusion very quickly.
I think it's rough because it's always the same similar timeline. It takes, you know, after 7 days is the max anyone survived, and it usually takes you before that. And so that's why the first half of the movie is very similar to the first half of the second movie is very similar to the first movie, is because it's like, okay, she's going through all these stages of increasing curseness, until you get a bit in the middle where it's like, okay, this is a bit different. And like I said, the scares are sort of just a bit bigger and bigger in scale, and the ending is a lot bigger in scale, even though it is very similar to the first movie. But I'm hoping that the third movie could potentially, take the movie in a more interesting direction. And I know that, you know, this happens a lot where you watch a movie and you go, don't worry, the next one will be better. I like this movie, but I think for the third one to be really good, and I might even enjoy the third movie even if it's the same thing again, but I think they need to take it down a road, which we won't spoil.
And they're setting that up.
I hope so. Yeah. Because I really enjoyed the movie, but I can see the criticisms that Callum's saying, and I can see the other criticisms of like, this is very samey, and you know, how much more can they do with this? And like I said, a lot of horror franchises is just the same movie over and over again. People love it. But yeah, I would like it to go in a different direction. And I hope that Parker Finn, you know, he knows.
Yeah.
He knows this. Like I hope he understands this.
I think so.
Yeah. Two things. At the end of at the climax, when there's some crazy, gory, body horror, weird monster stuff going on, I turned to Nathan in the cinema and I said, "Screw the substance." I used stronger language than that.
Yeah.
But I said, "Screw the substance." Like this movie, much cooler, like more effective use of gore and body horror. Also, Parker Finn, who I think Smile was his first feature film.
I think so.
Yeah, so he did that and he did this. So he's quite a good writer-director, and I like to see more from him, and I hope he does well with Smile 3. But apparently he's doing a reboot/remake/reimagining of Possession.
That's interesting.
That movie that Callum and I watched.
Sam Neill?
With Sam Neill, and Isabel John. Which, no, they shouldn't do that. Robert Pattinson apparently is in it. He says it's not a remake, but they say that a lot with remakes and reimaginings. I don't think they should do it. But I'll be interested to see what they bring to it.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
That's about all the time we've got for tonight.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Please like and subscribe to the Tuesday Review on all platforms. Facebook, Threads, Instagram, Newsmask, Blue Sky, Twitter, and YouTube at Tuesday Review AU.
Yeah. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube, ring the bell, because we have lots of cool video content coming out.
We're on Letterboxd. I'm Nathan B_90.
I am channeldrifter.
And I'm Callum Tuesday.
Are you on Letterboxd, Rafal? He shakes his head no.
Oh, that reminded me when you said you gave it 3.5 stars. I gave it 4 because I enjoyed it more. Same as I gave the first one. But Callum, I think you logged the first movie instead of the second movie.
Did I?
Yeah. Anyway, it reminded me.
So we'll be back next week. Adios, cousins.